much. And then Takahiro.
Yes. Hi, I'm Taka. I actually live in New York right now. I'm in healthcare right now, and we're looking into like digital transformation. I mean, obviously, like, many people, many patients start using telehealth, like Teladoc, and each hospital has the online um, examination right now. So yeah, that's the I'm looking to more like during the pandemic, but also after pandemic, how we can change and shift to the digital transformation in healthcare.
Got it. Yeah, we're doing a lot on that. So yeah, my hats off to you on that. That obviously that area is just under the gun right now for transformation. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so that was a roll call of everyone. What I'll do is I'll talk to you about Cisco's innovation strategy, how we do what are we doing for our innovation strategy, how we operate, and then addressing the elephant in the room. I mean, the major transformation that's going on right now in response to the pandemic is that what we're seeing is everyone's going through a transformation at the same time, and the stakes are pretty high on this. So when we take a look at that, I'll talk to you about what we're doing. I can tell you, just jumping right to it, is that it's not really that different than what we've been doing all along. It's not like, okay, all of a sudden the pandemic came, so our approach to innovation and change and disruption is different. So people are looking at our digital transformation saying, okay, well, that might have been your digital transformation a few months ago, but is it different? And I can clearly say that our strategy is not different than it was before. The stakes are higher. But maybe one analogy you could say is like you're walking on a balance beam that, we were walking on a balance beam before that was maybe 2 feet off the ground. Now that beam is 20 feet off the ground. So it's not all that different if you think about it, but the stakes are a little higher. The risk seems to be a little higher. But if you could do it to 20 inches or 2 feet off the ground, you could do it 200 feet off the ground if you're well trained at it. So I'll go over our innovation methodology. And I'll talk specifically about what we're doing with COVID and what we're doing with the transformation there. If you want to ask a question, since I'll be talking, just feel free to, if you mute yourself and then unmute yourself to ask a question, that's fine. It's much better when you ask and things like that, because if I go off and just start talking, it won't be as interactive. So feel free to just jump in and ask a question at any time. Great. So with that, I will start. I'll go over our innovation landscape, our approach to innovation, and then I'll talk about my group, the Strategic Innovation Group under Emerging Technologies. How to engage with us used to be, we would say, okay, go to your local innovation center. I'll talk about our locations, but now it seems to be all virtual and stuff like that. So that's how you can engage with Cisco, and I'll go over that. So our innovation strategy has been built upon these pillars. And these pillars are not really anything earth-shattering. This is just your options for when you're going to respond to a transformation, or when you're going to respond and how you're going to innovate. So you have a choice. You can build new product. You could buy new products or innovations, or you can partner with companies. You can invest, and you can co-develop. These are just the possibilities of what you could do. And my group and what I work on is I work on the co-development portion of this, but we're anchored in these different areas. So we're able to build product. We're very famously able to buy technologies. We do partner with companies and invest. And I'll go over those briefly so you can just see the landscape, but then I'll zoom into what we're doing on the co-development, which is the part that I work on. So when it comes to building, we have about 26,000 engineers that we can amass to respond to any type of product that we would like to build. But we tend to go into those things when we know we have a competitive advantage, when we think it's something that we know best and we can start to build. So, for example, I'll use this one. Very recently, we had worked on blockchain was one of the big technical areas we were working towards, and we built our own blockchain platform. we decided then not to offer it. We put it up for open source, but we felt that we were in a position to do that. That we even though we're a networking company, we know how to manage large distributed processes. And we thought that, okay, we know we have a competitive advantage in trying to build that. Whether or not we're the right people to sell it, we turned around and said, we're probably not the right people to sell it. So we went in that. But it's an example of when we think we're going to do something like that. Also, when it comes to something in our business, we will try to take that on. So if it comes to new switching, new hardware, new things like that, that's in Cisco's wheelhouse, we will take those things on to build. There are things that we do internally to make sure that we are allowing for new innovations to come in when we build. We have a challenge, which I'll go into. That's our employee challenge. It's sort of a contest that we do where we can have anybody bring up ideas. But we also have ways for people for taking on ideas that would normally not be part of their normal business. So we have a fund where people can ask for anywhere up to, usually it's about $500,000 to try to prototype or build something that was not incremental to our existing product line. And you sort of put a request in there. So it's almost like an internal VC, if you will, but for projects that would normally not be along the lines of incremental product releases. So that's one of the things we do to foster that sort of innovation. The other thing is, and these numbers probably have updated now. I have 208 acquisitions. I think we're at 210 now because we just bought Fluid Mesh. But we're a monster machine for when it comes to buying companies. Cisco, very very famously, I like to talk about the AppDynamics acquisition that we did a couple of years ago. We wound up buying that company. The company was set to go public on a Wednesday, and we bought the company. The company was set to go public on a Monday morning, and the Wednesday before, we decided we were going to buy them, and we bought them before they went public. You can't buy a home in that amount of time. From a Wednesday to a Monday, that's a really quick time to just do due diligence on that, and we did that for a billion-dollar company. Now we were examining that company, working with that company before, so we had already known about them and keeping an eye on them. But it's a response to just say that our team is very good at acquiring companies, and what we do very differently when we buy a company is a lot of companies, tech companies, when they buy something, they look at them and they say, well, let's bring them in the fold. And I can always like to give a little ding to Google or Facebook or things like that. When they buy something, they're like, okay, now your product becomes a Google product, right? Cisco doesn't do that. We normally, and we're very well known for, we displace what we were doing. If we went and bought something and bought a company, we usually realize at that point that maybe the projects that we were doing internally are the ones that need to be displaced by what's coming in. So we get an injection of new ideas and new technology into the company. We try to absorb and be transformed by our purchases, not to transform what we purchased into our logo, right? And that's a very, very big difference from what some of the other companies do. And I bring that up. I mean, we're a large company, and some of you are smaller companies or medium-sized ones. It's a different way of thinking. We start to look at it as though it's a cultural thing where we say, we're not here to absorb. We're here to be changed by the things that we buy. So, and we align some of those to our priority areas. And typically, too, the other difference that we have when we purchase companies, it's not just the technology, it's also the cultural fit. Our integration teams, the people who make sure that the employees come into the company and the assets are brought into the company, we make sure that before we do a purchase that we can see a cultural fit or we see that culture will transform Cisco. And sometimes, as we did with our Meraki purchase and the AppDynamics one that I talked about, we kept those as separate entities. When those companies were first brought in, they were separate. I couldn't even badge in. It was almost a different company that walking into it. Now we're all under one fold because we have been transformed by those companies when they came in, and we've had a chance to change them. So we'll incubate them, if you will, a little bit, and hold them as they come in there. The analogy I like to use that is like adding a fish to a fish tank. You have to keep it isolated a little bit and make sure both the tank and the fish are adjusted to each other, and then you go and bring them in. So that's what we do there. The other thing is we'll partner with people. We'll partner with people that we're not going to go out and buy Google or Apple or anytime soon. But our openness to working with partners, sometimes even competitors, to make sure that things will work is pretty well renowned. There was a lot of talk quite some months ago about Huawei and China and the U.S. relationships with that. And Chuck, our CEO, came out to the whole company and says, look, do not try to capitalize on the fact that some countries are not going to be doing business with a competitor. That could change overnight, and we have to work with our competitors in order to do that. And that comes from the nature of the internet, right? The internet works because of cooperation, not because of that intense competition. Or competition helps you shape your products, but if competition blocks you from working with others who have similar goals, then that's a problem for us. That's the nature of what we're doing. The likes of, just say, Apple, it doesn't make sense for them to do that because they're very intensely competitive on a product that they're putting out. But for us, we need the internet to work. We'll differentiate later on what we can do, but in the beginning, we want to make sure that the internet works. Investing in companies, we maintain 45 funds in 25 countries. The fund is about $2 billion. And that alone will put us as one of the largest VCs in the Valley and worldwide. We're a massive fund. And when we are investing in companies, and I'll jump ahead to this, it's because we're trying to learn about something or we're trying to create or grow a new market, right? The cycle of innovation that we look at, the best analogy I can always think of is flight. If you think about how powered manned flight worked, in the beginning, people just wanted to prove that you could fly, and which is in the beginning, the Wright brothers, it's two people from a bicycle shop proving that you could fly a short distance. But then someone has to prove in the next phase of that, and that's startups. Basically, a startup goes in and proves that you could fly. The next phase is to say, well, let me prove that there's a business about that. So somebody's going to prove that you can fly from Paris to New York reliably, so that you can make a business out of people flying from Paris to New York. Then there's a scale up to the point where we are now, or not today, but to where the world was, where there are thousands of flights going daily from different cities. In the area that we're in right now, it's not as much, but that's, you can see the pattern of that. It's startup to proof of business model to scaling up. And when we invest, we invest in companies that are trying to prove out their business and then scale up. That's where we like to be, not as much in the startup area. In the startup area, we'll invest in other companies that are doing the startup research. So we invest in a fund or a VC firm that's called Decibel. And Decibel will then look at the startups. So we're investing in a fund that's investing in, that's looking at startups. So we can keep a pulse on what's going on there. But when we fund, we're looking for something to create or grow a market or to learn about a business model or something that we work on. And then there's the innovation centers. So on my team, we maintain the innovation centers where we co-develop with our customers. We'll talk to our customers, find out what they want. There's two schools of innovation traffic, if you will. There's innovation coming in from the customers, and there's innovation that comes in from the technology and ourselves, our company going out. So we may take innovations and changes that we have or things that we're working on, bring them out to customers and test it and just say, hey, what do you think? I'm from New York originally, and one of the pizzerias around where I grew up won quite a few times the best pizza in the world. And it's not because they made the best pizza. It's because the owner of that place used to take out samples of the pizza, and every day, whatever he was working on, he would go to his customers. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about that? And he would tweak it. So his product then reflected the opinions and the best intentions of all of his customers. So that's what we try to do at the innovation centers. But then again, we're also listening to customers coming in and say, hey, I've got a problem. This has never been done. We're trying to monitor crops over hectares of space in Australia. How do we keep connected on that? And how do we monitor the growth of crops in such an area? We did work with the rhinos. We were working on in a park in South Africa where we are putting up monitoring stations for people that are poaching in the Kruger National Forest. I mean, how do you set up areas that you're going to do that in such a hostile environment and things like that? So there are things that people have never done before that we're trying to do that our customers are asking us to do, and we'll work with them on that. So we go both ways, bringing things out to customers and bringing the customers in. And that's what we do at our innovation centers. So in a summary, that's our innovation strategy. We look at these as pillars of that. We can either build, we buy, we partner, we invest, and we co-develop. And I mostly work on the co-development portion, but with the other, in partnership with the people who work on the other areas of that. So let me pause. That's our strategy. Before I go in there, if there's any questions, just feel free to sort of unmute and go for it. If not, I will just keep going. Okay, thanks. So one of the reasons that we innovate is because we know there are emerging technologies and market shifts, right? And we maintain, both for investments and for our innovation, sort of a map of disruptions, of what can easily be disrupted. So the types of services that you see in the center are things that disrupt very easily. So for example, something that's pure software, like a Facebook or something, can be easily disrupted, right? Because the cost and risk of change is very small. And as you go out to the other ends, the cost and risk of change, as you go further and further out, become a lot higher. If Facebook wants to put out a new feature or try something new, throw it up on a website for a portion of its users. If it doesn't work, take it down. No harm, no foul, no problem. If you're on an oil rig out in the middle of the Mediterranean and you're going to deploy a new solution on the oil rig, the cost of failure and to reverse what you did is quite high. So you have to make sure that you're going through different rigors. So the cost of change is different on that. So some sectors can change very quickly, some can change not as quickly. And we have to make sure that we understand that so that we know what kind of changes we could put out and what we can do for the pace of innovation. And it's different for each different vertical. The pace is different, the need is different. And with right now, with the thing that's going on, the whole world sort of changed over in a few nights. That disruption is happening, and you'll see the response to the disruption is going to happen quicker from the things that are at the middle of that radar than it is from the things at the end of that radar. Right? So we keep track of that. One thing about us that differentiates us is that we firmly believe that no one company can innovate by itself. That comes from our roots in the internet. We learned a lot during the time when telephony changed from the POT system, the plain old telephone telephony systems, to the internet. All phone calls go through the internet. That didn't happen at the time. If you wanted to pick up a phone anywhere on the planet, get a dial tone and make a call, you can. That has to work. You cannot make it proprietary. If you look at the way messaging works right now, if I want to communicate with you and send a text message to you, I have to first decide or talk to you and say, well, do you have WhatsApp? Do you have Apple? Do you have Messenger? Do I contact you on Facebook? Do I contact you on Snapchat? There's many, many different ways of doing it. You'll see that now, even for the video, right? People are saying, are you on WebEx? Are you on Zoom? Are you on FaceTime? So if we allow those things to the internet to go in those silos, the internet wouldn't work. So we understand that we have to work with competitors, partners, to make sure that we can that our goals are aligned in the aggregate, and we'll differentiate then over features after that, right? We always say that Cisco, when we we always say at Cisco, when we get into a new technology, you know, what market share should we get? We always say, well, our fair share of it, right? We'll get our fair share of the market, but we want to make the market and make sure the technology works. That's a lot different than a lot of people look at it. A lot of people say, okay, well, I'm just going to try to do work on mine and capture my own and not be as open to work with people that might be seen as a competitor. Okay. So I'll go into our strategic innovation group, my group, and this is a point where I start to talk about disruptions. How do we keep an eye on new business models, technologies? How do we keep abreast of these things, and how do we operate? And how do we respond to those changes? And that's a very important thing that's going on now with the digital transformations. How are you taking your companies to be digital first? It's just becoming quite obvious that the companies that are closer to the center of that target and that are digital first will be able to respond to a disruption better than those who are not digital first and that are further along on the outside of that radar. Our group is approximately 65 people. We work on something about 200 innovation projects at any one time from different centers. We're located in 14 countries. We were getting about 8,000 visitors, 8 to 9,000 visitors a year to the centers to come in and work with us and physically come in and see some of the innovations. We're on track now, even though with the change, to probably now exceed that because we've gone virtual with all of our visits. Exactly the way I'm presenting now, all of our technologies and things that we do at the centers are virtual. If there was something that required us to be physically at a place, we have a combination of cameras and robots and things that are going around that can show physical demos or physical actuators or things. So it's quite easy for us to now have somebody look at something that we've been working on in Australia or Singapore or London and just do that virtually. So I'll talk about our innovation centers. This is our footprint globally. I usually get a question here. About every time I usually get a question on the map, so I'll see if anybody feels like unmuting and asking. But if not, if everybody's feeling shy to go in there, I'll just keep going. Everybody's on mute, so if you want to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself and ask a question. Typically, the question I get here is that how come we don't have innovation centers in the U.S. or in Silicon Valley in San Jose? The reason for that is we try to tend to be where our customers are, not where our engineering forces. Our massive amounts of engineering is located in India and in the U.S. That's where we're located. Our customers are all over the place. So we want to make sure that we have outreach to our customers and to the things that are changing in the different markets, as opposed to putting it where we're located. And we have that luxury of being able to do that. So that's why we have those outreach areas. Then each of the centers are working on, okay.
Yeah, I think there was also a question, why not in China?
Oh yeah, why not in China? Yeah. The difference between our China model and sorry, I jumped ahead very quickly on some of these things. Our Singapore location handles a lot of what's going on in Asia, so we have contacts in China there. A lot of that has to do with the Chinese market. In order for us to work in China, we have to work through partners. So Inspur is our partner in there in order to sell into the Chinese market and the restrictions on the government in there. So while we do have offices in there, our innovation for the Asia Pac is really centered around our Singapore area, and then we'll spread out there. Now, our manufacturing and our supply chain is located throughout China and throughout Asia, and we have done some things with our own supply chain, blockchain being one of them. We do, even though I told you we divested from our blockchain as a product, we do run blockchain across our inventory and our supply chain, and that's a project that went out all through China. And we tend to sort of use the centers as a starting off point for that area. So while in South America we have a center in Rio, we do have work that's going on in Chile and Argentina with the local presence that we do have there. It's just that we haven't fully brought it up into an innovation center, and I'll speak to sort of how we grow into an innovation center.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go for it.
How make you sure that you coordinate all the works? Maybe in different part of the world, you get different kind of ideas because the customer behavior is different. So if something is coming out from Tokyo and Singapore, maybe you can adapt it for US and so on. How do you handle all these ideas and make sure that you get the best out of it?
Yeah, thanks. So how do we coordinate our projects across there, and how do we make sure we sort of cross-pollinate the ideas from there? So I'll get into that. It's my role. The short answer is that's my role. I run the technologies across it. So I review all the projects that are going on in the different areas, in the different centers. And that's interesting when it comes to digital transformation. Like a call I'm doing here, I run a weekly, just to get into, actually how we do it. I run a weekly scrum with each one of the centers. Same day a week. I start early in the morning and late at night, and I just go once through with every center around the world over WebEx like this. And we go through all of the projects, and we go over the goals. What are the projects that you're working on? What should come in? I'll get into how we classify the projects and how we look at them. But the short answer is I coordinate that globally, and also a lot of the technologies that we use, WebEx Teams, WebEx, we have a lot of it happens virtually for us in the chat rooms, right? And a lot of people use maybe different platforms. That we obviously use WebEx Teams for that. So that's a lot goes on online. We have like things that you monitor, and we say, oh, hey, this just happened here. We have a highlight. We just had a visit from this person. So I can see a feed of everything that's going on in there, and everybody else can.
So one more question, please. Mm-hmm. Hello. Yeah. Go ahead. I can, as we can see, you have plenty of innovation centers worldwide. So just need to understand for Cisco, any of Cisco employee can share his idea through these centers, and somebody who has to evaluate these ideas and share it with you on a weekly basis, for example, or every day. So it's quite yeah.
I'll get into that. Yeah, I'll get into. So you're saying how does an employee come up with an idea and filter in there? And we have our group runs a challenge, and I'll get into that. I mean, we have 70,000 employees worldwide, and we've gotten participation 65% of the employees in our innovation efforts. And I'll go into how we do that. Give me a second on that one. I'll get into that. So I'll address first how we operate for innovation ideas that are coming in from the customers and from our product teams, and then how do we handle innovation ideas that just come from any employee, right? So I'll go over that. The point on this right now is to show that we are focused on organically in each city the areas that are very natural and organic to that city. You can imagine we do mining and agriculture in Australia. We do public sector finance in London. We do manufacturing in Germany and Singapore and Tokyo. So it's very much related to the stereotype of the city that it's in, and that's why we're located in sort of these mega cities. In that these cities have a stereotype of the kind of problems that they're working on. So if you're going to be working on manufacturing and logistics, you want to be in Asia, and Singapore is doing a lot with IoT and blockchain there. If you want to do mining and agriculture and networks across wide areas, and you want that expertise to come from Australia. Our center leads, we all work together online and virtually, and I can tell you one of the ones that we were proud of is that we had, it's just a good example of it. We had a farming conglomerate in Mexico that wanted us to work on something. Our Toronto Innovation Center, which runs most of the things for the U.S. and North America, was working on the project, but the technology and the expertise was coming from our team in Perth and Sydney. So we were able to combine those things together because we have expertise in different areas, and we're lucky that way because we have a large footprint.
Thank you.
Sure. And our centers have different types. We grow centers. We don't decide, I'm going to open up one in this center. We don't do that. Typically, what we do is a few people might be working together, and they'll just have an office location, and then maybe they have a dedicated room, and then we see that we're taking over a space, and then we might give them a standalone space. Or we might partner and be on location like we are in Perth. We're located on a campus at Curtin University, and we have some space at Curtin University, and we work with them. So we grow them, and then we don't really care about the physical space. We're quite virtual about it. If I wanted to open up an innovation center, innovation team, is what we would do first, and I needed to be located in Chile, basically all you need is internet connection and just a dedicated room, and you could start working with us, right? All of our tools would come in there. And I'll talk about our network. We maintain a network of our own network, and I'll go into that in a second. I think the question was about how do we work on projects? Our projects, we say yes to every idea. Okay, your idea we'll always say yes to. The idea is yes. Whether or not it becomes a project and something we want to execute on, that's a yes or no decision. It's a great idea. It's an idea. Great. Let's say yes to it. Let's take a look at it. Then we decide if it's something that we should do, and then we decide if it's something that we should sell. Those are 2 different things. 3 different things. We categorize our projects into these 4 levels. These are maturity levels, that we call it. An initial engagement, where I might just be talking to a customer or a group of customers. Fictitiously, I could be talking to IKEA and MasterCard or Visa and saying, hey, let's work on frictionless pay or something like that. We might just be having initial engagement saying, hey, there's some ideas that we want to work on. That we'll track that engagement as, okay, we're talking to you. Next, we'll say, oh, we're working on a problem. We're trying to find a solution. We have a specific problem. We want to get frictionless pay in retail going. Okay, we're going to take that problem and we're going to try to find a solution to that. The next step is we're going to develop on that. We're going to develop a proof of concept or a proof of value. And at that point, we'll bring in partners and the different people from Cisco on that. Then after that, we'll go to an implementation of that, which for us now, we start to call that exploitation. It's a tough word, but we call it exploiting. Exploiting the project is either making a product out of it, going to market for ourselves or our partners, or it may just be showing the art of what's possible and saying, look, this is something that we looked at. It's going to take 5 more years for the technology to come up to it, but let's keep showing it to people so that they know this is the roadmap. So that's sort of your concept car on that. So 2 things. We could either take it right to market, or we could turn around and say, okay, let's hold on to the ideas and germinate the idea as it starts to grow. But anywhere along the line, we will divest the project, and ruthlessly, okay? We make sure there are things that we want to do and things that we don't want to do. We do not want our innovation centers or innovation teams to become a small portion of the company inside the company. This is where I like to give digs on the other companies in the Valley. We will not open a Lab 51, Amazon Lab, or Google Labs. We're not going to have a Cisco Labs that comes up with the innovation, because we believe very rigorously that that is a mistake. That what you're doing is saying, I can't innovate and I can't be disruptive as a company, so I'm going to make a small copy of my company with the exact structure and leads to it, and then they're going to do the innovation. Well, how am I going to change the company if I've made a small version of my company that's going to be agile and the rest of the company can't be? It's best to work on that. So we don't want to be a shadow development. We don't want to work on projects that the company doesn't want to work on. We don't want to work on one-off projects. The one big change that we got, and it's sports analogies, but we were working with the Barcelona football team and proper football, the soccer team. And they were focusing on when the player doesn't have the ball. They looked at it and said, okay, players have the ball for three minutes on average during a game. You've got to know what to do the other 87 minutes of the game. So let's focus on that. So again, I'm not training or looking for projects. 90% of what I do, one in 10 ideas we'll accept to work on, and then 1 in 10 of those might be successful, which means I have to get really good at getting rid of almost 99% of the projects I get. At least 1 in 10 of projects I got to get rid of them, right? So I have to be ruthless about saying no and getting rid of the projects, trying to fail fast, find out what's going on. And in disruption, in times of disruption, especially digital disruption, we're at the center of that target, the ability to divest and change and fail fast is what's going to keep you agile in there. So we go through these phases. We divest the project as soon as we see it's not appropriate for us, and we say, hey, we've done all we can, get rid of it, and we keep the learning. So the question was, what do? We track all of the projects in here in our own, we have a tracker that goes through and looks at each project, each idea, follows them through these phases, and we scrub them, almost like engineers doing bug scrubs. We keep scrubbing them, track every comment on it, what's going on with it, and then if we divest it, we say we keep the reasons, because that's gold for us. We want to make sure that once we say something and we say no to something and we decide not to do it, it's not a zombie project that keeps coming back over and over and over again. Zombies are the worst things that you can have. The idea keeps coming back and coming back, coming back. We want to be the people that said, we looked at it, we tried it. No, move on, okay? Now that said, we are looking for the things that are going to go viral, but it's like looking for a viral video in YouTube. I don't know which video is going to go viral, but I know which ones aren't, right? I mean, that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. You're going to get rid of all the ones that are no good. Right? So that's how a sort of a change on that. logistically, we maintain a network. All of our centers are networked together. They better be. We're Cisco. But we also look like a medium-sized enterprise in our physical network, and that's so that we can try things out. If somebody comes in the company and says, I have an idea, blockchain was one of them, I have an idea to run blockchain across the whole planet, well, we can do that. We can put nodes at our different centers and our different locations and network together and try out what our customers try out. So this network is in there is so that we can try out and operate just like a customer does on a global level. Okay. So the question to how do we track and look at our projects is we look at each one of them, and each idea that comes in, each engagement that we have, something we decide to look at, we will track it, we'll put the business value on it, we'll keep the analysis to it, we'll start linking documents to it, and then we'll comment on it all the way through, and then we keep a status on those. Is it active, held, almost like a bug scrub on those things, and then we'll say yes or no to those. So I hope that answered the question on our process. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about any other questions in there. I mean, you feel free, you can put it in the chat, or if you want, or you could just you can unmute and ask.
So I have a quick question on this. So sure. on the one side, you said that you don't want to have this lab approach, you don't want to have this separation approach, and then on the other side, you said that the companies that you acquire, you kind of keeping them separate to get them acclimated. How do you balance those two things? How do you balance the integration of the new ideas that come in internally versus the externally?
Sure. Probably the bad analogy, it was the first time I tried to use that fish analogy. When we keep it separate, it's not, I misspoke, it's not to get them acclimated to Cisco. It's to get Cisco acclimated to them, okay? And it really, really does go in that opposite direction. Whenever a new company comes in or something, or a new team starts to work on something internally, they get inundated with Cisco, from Cisco. 70,000 employees all come in and, hey, how can I work with you? How can I work with them? It's like we insulate it to protect them. There is some culture or technological difference in that company that needs to be preserved and can't be crushed by the weight of us as a big company. We also are mindful of that when and if we work with companies that are trying to scale up. Remember I talked about somebody's trying to scale up a company. We're trying to scale up maybe the airlines to flights that are going in there. If I walk in there at Cisco and say, hey, you know, you're a medium-sized company and you're looking to grow, or you're just growing out of the startup, you're looking to grow, come work with us. They will stop everything they're doing and start to work with us because we're a behemoth and they think that we're gonna make them $1 billion tomorrow. So we could crush a company. So that insulation is so that we don't crush them, not so that it's the other way around. So we want to preserve them. That make sense?
Yes. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sure. So business models and technology. The disruptions are going to come. Typically, we're going to come from new business models that can come in. Customers will walk you off a cliff. They will take your existing product and say, new feature, new feature, new feature, new feature, and you will probably walk down a road, and then a competitor or somebody will come in and say, hey, you missed it because you were just paying attention to the customer and not the new trends that are going in. So our group is constantly looking amongst those build, buy, partner pillars. We're looking at new technology, and we're looking at the disruptions that are going to come around and what is going to disrupt us. You have a choice. You could be washed over by a disruption. You could respond to the disruption, or you could be the disruption. We'd rather be the disruption. We'd rather find out about it and join in on it and be part of the disruptive force than to say, oh, I'm going to respond to it. That's the best position to be in. So we are looking always at new things. And I'll use the blockchain example because it was very clear. Customers were asking us a lot about, can you help us on supply chain? Can you help us in audits? Can you help us in medical records? And they're asking us on all these different things. If we had gone around and done one feature for each one, we might have been doing a feature in each platform that we were doing. But we found that blockchain could solve a host of those problems. So we kept an eye on that technology until it started moving forward. So that's what we do. We look at those technologies and we look at the trends, and we want to make sure that we're staying ahead of it. So it's a practice of keeping vigilant in there. This is something that this is what the transformation resiliency of what you have to do to stay resilient to a transformation. And right now with COVID and the pandemic that came around, the stakes are even higher for this. But this is the same process that you would do even if you're just trying to do a Snapchat type thing and you're saying, hey, what's going on? You have to be ready for a transformation to come about. And when it happens, you need to do what you need to do to respond to it, reflect on what happened, reimagine your business, and then rebound. This is sort of the way you go through. And this process of doing this is how you respond to this transformation. And when the digital transformation, these things happen much quicker. So again, if you're at the center of that target, that transformation is going to be a lot different, and the cycle is going to be a lot quicker than if you just say you're on an oil rig. This going from response to rebound on an oil rig is going to be very different from response to rebound in just say an online transaction or pay. Because we have been going through this process in there, our response to the pandemic has been, this is our playbook. We just because the stakes are higher doesn't mean that we're not going to be doing this. And we've been lucky in that we've been through some of these disruptions before. We have very famously had people within the company work on something prior and then look at that innovation, get frustrated with the company because we didn't respond, reflect, and reimagine, and they leave the company, and then they wind up being listed right alongside us on the NASDAQ. There's kind of a famous company now on this platform here that's sort of like that. We don't want those things to happen. So we want to make sure that we can go through this cycle. And if you look at your response to just say COVID or the pandemic, if you are ready and you're conducting business and you remain agile to disruption, then your first response to something that's coming in is to look at your emergency response and accept the fact that you're going to make some temporary changes right now to respond to the criticalness of what's going on. The boat's sinking, or I've got a leak, I've got to patch it up. Accept the fact that that's temporary. But at some point, you're going to have to reflect on what's going on, look at what you're doing in response to that emergency, and then try to say, okay, what can I change? What can I look at? And how do I retain my institutional knowledge? Just because you're going to change doesn't mean the knowledge that you've gained in your company is not valid or not something that's marketable. The next thing then is after you've reflected, you've looked at it, you're going to reimagine. You're going to embrace the learnings that you've had. And because you're in a wave of a transition, you have to take risks and fail fast. And when you're looking at something like now with the COVID and pandemic, taking the risks and fail fast, there's never been a better time to do that. If you're going to be having a bad 2 or 3 quarters anyway, the cost of your risks are going to be quite lower than what they were before. You're going to have a bad quarter anyway. Take the risks and try to fail fast now while your quarters and earnings are going to be bad. Find out what's going on, reimagine your business, and then you rebound. The things that have been working, you try to amplify them, you build on your new agility, and you go back to being ready again for the next one. That's the transformation that we go through, and that's sort of the cycle that we try to maintain at the company and through our innovation efforts. We try to keep that going. Okay, so any questions on that? Okay. Right now, I just wanted to bring up, this is our response to COVID, what we looked at as our strategy. What are we going to do in responding to the pandemic? So we looked at that and we said, oh, we need to respond. How are we going to respond? Well, the key areas that we want to look at is the most vulnerable people, families and communities, helping research and the resiliency, and then helping towards strategic recovery. So we'll have, for our group, we will make sure that we are responding in these areas because that's a strategic way that we want to respond. We want to respond in this way to make sure that we're covering these areas. So when it comes to helping the most vulnerable in there, you'll see that Cisco, our focus right now is helping the people, the first responders, homeless, the food insecure. After that, we're trying to help, right now, we're also looking to help families and communities with education, healthcare, daycare, and things that we can do through our WebEx platform. How do we help with strategic recovery on these things? How do these businesses strategically recover in this phase of responding? We haven't gotten into that reflect stage yet. So right now we're concentrating on response. Then we'll reflect with our customers and ourselves, and then we will look to get the rebound. That make sense? So we've really taken a look at what we do in the response and said, let's come up with a strategy. And what are the areas where we can make a difference? And then we'll help with the response. And then later we'll move off into the other areas. And that cycle really helps anybody when the transformation comes. If it's less serious, if you're saying a customer is coming in and they come up with a transformation, and you've got to go through that first response, right? Okay, so that's what I had there. Is there any questions on the transitions or anything like that? And that, because I'm going to go off onto another topic now, which is, and the question came, how do we keep the ideas coming in from all of our employees coming in through the company and coming in through our centers? Okay, and if I'm not addressing any of the areas that you were asking for in the beginning, please do just chime in and ask. So the question was also before was how do we enable our employees to come up with ideas and be innovative? One example we like to use all the time is Kodak. Kodak had built the digital camera, and they looked at it and said, oh, look, in about 10 to 15 years, everything's going to be digital, and the photography is going to go to a digital platform. Now, the company was so entrenched on film and photography that they didn't see that their own internal people saw this. And you can imagine somebody at Kodak fictitiously saying, my God, I'm telling you, everything is going to be digital. Photography is going to be digital. Film is over and done with. And the response to that would be, you could see the executives going, well, look, why would anybody want to buy a $3,000 computer to take a picture when all they have to do is get a camera, drop it off at the drugstore, and get the pictures the next day, right? It's those kind of disruptions that if your employees find out about it, you don't want one of two things. You don't want them to be, as happened to us a few times, where they famously nail their resumes to the door, leave, and they're your competitor. Or even worse, the idea dies on the vine and that person is just dejected and goes nowhere on that. So about 6 years ago, we did this survey. That's going to be 7 years now. We did this survey and we asked this, and these are responses we got back from people. Do you feel innovative at work, and do you feel like you can work on things? This is from our HR, from our human resources. Our human resources, when you come in as a manager, we say we have our people deal. There are 11 moments that matter for either onboarding or maintaining an employee. And some of these things that matter, when somebody can imagine a new employee coming in, they just want to work about like where I work, what's my work environment, what team am I on, what's my workplace, what technology and what experiences am I having. But you'll see right in there that my rewards, what their salary is things they care about, and also their innovation. From human resources up, we said employees feeling as though they're innovative is a key driver for why they would want to be part of Cisco and why they would want to remain at Cisco. And we were voted one of the best places to work because of actually one of the things that we did, which is our Innovate Everywhere Challenge. And I'll also talk to you about how we disrupted that now for response to COVID. We run a challenge. We run a contest. It's an internal contest. It looks like Kickstarter internally. Anybody can throw an idea up in there. They run for about, we run them every 9 months. We're in our 5th one now. And it's a challenge where ideas go in. Everyone in the company gets 5 tokens to invest in those ideas. So it's sort of a voting system, if you will, where people in the company say, I like this idea, I like this idea. The ones that bubble up to the top from the voting will move on to a next round. But we also have a way of judging them. We have judges that judge them. So it's not just based on voting. But we found that there's 2 types of people in the company. There's people who want to give out a new idea, but then there's others that are later in career that say, hey, and I'll exaggerate for a second, I've been at the company for 20 years and I'm the best network engineer the world has ever seen. I don't want to submit my idea to be judged, right? Well, those are the people that we get to be judges, to coach teams, to be mentors of the teams in there. And they're rewarded for being part of that. And that feeling of reward is a lasting one. If you mentor a team and they move far, it's like your kids graduating from college or something like that. You feel that sense of pride just as much as if you had gone through it yourself. So those are the 2 types of people and how we keep them engaged. There are people that say, I got an idea and I want to see it go. And there are other people saying, wow, I can help you on that. And by that, we get coverage of the entire company in there. And we've had 65% of the workforce participate in this program. Now, some people say they don't have enough. I want to work, but I don't know what idea to come up with. So we give them some things that they can work on. They can grab a few. They can grab one from each area. They can take a technology, a business model, and a market, combine those together. So they could do like robotics, rent versus buy for education. Right away, some ideas can come in. Okay, I have a robot. I could put the business model as to be to lease it. And I could put it in the educational area so I could move things around and have people do remote classes with a robot. So, I mean, if you just picked any three at random, you could probably spark some ideas. The ideas can be anything. We don't care. It doesn't have to be related to the business, and we don't give them specifically, oh, your idea doesn't fit. There was a group there that was working on pool sensors in a pool to see if someone was drowning or if a pet worked in there. We're like, yeah, great. And they went pretty far in the competition. We don't care on that. In fact, we encourage that, because what we want here is people are submitting the ideas. We get about 700 to 800 ideas submitted in there each time. 20 teams are taken from there and moved on to the next round. Those 20 semifinalists all do a 3 days design thinking, we call it Startup Cisco workshop. They get $5,000 award, $5,000 in their pocket to split amongst the team. 1,000 of that is used for moving the project forward. And that is the key to this program. If anything that happens from there, if we get no ideas from there, what we're doing, the teams are typically about 5 people each. We're getting about 100 of the most motivated people in our companies, and we're training them on innovation, on the innovation cycle and innovation ideas. So we've won from a company, and we've won at that point. If none of these ideas go to market, it doesn't matter. Because me as running the innovation centers, I know that people in the company are being trained in this, and they're working also on a project that is near to them, that they are passionate about, so the learning is going to be that much better. So somebody working on a sensor for a pool is going to learn the process and how to do this much better than if it was a fictitious example. We then pick six finalists, and after that, they go through pitching rounds where we bring the people in. We bring VCs, our senior executives, our CEO sometimes participates as a judge, and they are presenting their ideas in a Shark Tank style to work for their ideas. At that point, they have a $10,000 award in there. After that, 3 of them are picked as winners. We don't do first, second, or third, because just like any of those American Idol or talent contests, sometimes the 4th place winner or the 3rd place winner is the one that goes further. So we also will give up to a $10,000 match for any idea that made it through that you want to pursue that got an executive sponsorship. After that, if you can convince an executive to say, yes, I want to work on it, then great, we will match it $10,000 to keep the ideas moving. What we did now in response to the pandemic is we don't have a competition on this one. What we did is we opened up the platform and said, if you've got any idea for helping out anyone in response to the pandemic, put the ideas in there and we'll fast track them to see what we can do. So one of the ones that we did is we took all of our 3D printers across the company. We started 3D printing face shields, right, and distributing them. The other thing we did, which came from this, is we went through all of our desktops. Our offices no one's been in our offices for weeks now. So technically all the gear has been incubated and cleaned. It's fine now. What we did is we went through there and took all of our video units off of the desks, all of a certain size, our DX80s video units off the desks, took them in, cleaned them, and then we're distributing them around the world to healthcare workers, nursing homes for the elderly, so that they can do video conferencing and video check-in. And we took thousands and thousands of those around the globe and put them out in there. We're also now doing a thing where if people need gear and the supply chains are not fast enough, they can take gear out of our offices. We'll replace them later, right? So things like that are bubbling up, and we put the challenge in there. We got something about, I think something like about 120 ideas that we're now incubating in the later rounds of this, and that we're trying to move forward, and we're accelerating that in. And that has visibility all the way up to our CEO on that. So it's a way that we turn the challenge into like, hey, we're not competing right now amongst ourselves internally. Let's just all put the ideas and anybody can join in on that. So we usually get, we have now about 4,000 submissions. We've done another round of them. Again, 65% of the workforce is engaged in this, and we get a lot of patents and things out of this as well. the rest of our group is done with thought leadership, and I won't go too much into that, but that's how we come around here and start talking to you folks at the centers and stuff. So yes, we're at the top of the hour, and I've gone through things. So I'll just open up for questions or anything else like that, and we can leave it at that.
Thanks so much.